Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, the place for internet technology professionals whose work-life balance plan has imploded. We are here to provide solutions that will help the IT pro live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hi, this is Joanne Victoria, the I Know What Works coach, and I'm the author of 7 books, including Lighting Your Path, How to Create the Life You Want, and Pushy for a Moment, Instant Solutions to Everyday Challenges. I'm also the host to what you're listening to right now, the Sanity Project podcast, and I partner with IT professionals in telecommunications, technology, entertainment, and mass media industries whose work-life balance plan has imploded. The Sanity Project podcast is a platform for experts in the personal development and IT communities to share their wisdom, expertise, and solutions that will help the IT pro live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. And our guest today is a perfect match for what I am looking for, someone who deals in stress, relationships, codependency, anxiety, and that catch-all depression. Our guest today is Brooke Sprowl, LCSW, and she is the founder, CEO, and clinical director of My LA Therapy, where she oversees and trains a team of clinicians. With over 10 years of experience providing therapy for individuals, couples, and families, her primary specializations include relationships, codependency, anxiety, and depression. Earning her master's in clinical social welfare with a specialization in mental health from UCLA and bachelor's degrees in neuroscience and Spanish from USC, she is passionate about applying her knowledge of the brain, biology, human behavior, and communication to help people transform their lives. Brooke is currently in the process of publishing her new book, Why You Should Date Emotionally Unavailable Men, use your unhealthy relationship to transform yourself and your love life. Brooke is going to talk today about helping people with codependency and attachment issues improve their relationships and communication skills. Welcome to the program, Brooke Sprowl. Yay!
Thanks so much, Joanne. What a wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I am grateful that you are here because, you're LA home, and I think that that's important for people to know because LA's got a lot of therapists, and then
and a lot of bad ones, unfortunately. It's hard to find a good therapist.
And here you are.
A good therapist has a good date, I think, in this town.
It's like trying to find a good pizza. Or a good bagel, almost equally as difficult. So how do you help people with codependency and attachment issues improve their relationships?
One of the most important things in relationships is to own your responsibility in contributing to the relationship dynamics. The most natural thing in a relationship, by virtue of the fact that we have blind spots, is to look at our partner and go, you're the problem, and to scapegoat and to say, this thing you're doing, if you didn't do that, our relationship would be fine. The part that we miss as partners is quite often how we are the very cause of the thing we object to in our partners. And so the most critical piece in couples therapy and even in the individuals I work with is helping them look at their contribution to creating the dynamics in their relationships and seeing their blind spots.
That's a big thing because that's a big ask because people don't necessarily want to take responsibility in a relationship. They figure they show up,
right?
They have their first 6 months of fun and games, whatever it might be, and then what?
Right. Well, unfortunately, there's a bit of an entitlement mentality in our culture about relationships. There's sort of a commodification, what do you give me? There's a narcissistic use of others. And that's not a foundation for a stable, healthy, long-term relationship. It's not about, what you can deliver. It's, love is a lot more robust and nuanced than that, I think.
Well, I think that you're right. There's a sense of entitlement about a relationship, and I just see them being problematic. I don't I'm concerned about the maturity of people going into relationships at the age of 20, 21. I'm looking at a personal relationship one-on-one that is very difficult to do today.
Right, right. Yeah, to your point about people not being receptive to or wanting to look at their role, I think that they have to get to a breaking point where they're finding themselves kind of in the same version of a relationship with different partners over and over again, where they go, I'm the common denominator, this isn't working. And often we have to hit rock bottom before we're willing to do the painful work on ourselves.
Yeah, I experienced something like that with my second husband. We went to counseling. Things were not good, and we went to counseling and with an agreement. And at the very end of the counseling, because it did come to an end because nothing was happening, he said I didn't want to do it anyway. So I think that was more devastating than him if he would have said I don't want to go start it, because it was like, what did I waste my time on here? Right. And when do you suggest that people do go into therapy / counseling in a relationship that they're trying to make, assuming that everybody's an adult or grown up and maybe it's the last relationship that they hope to have? I'm not even sure how you approach that, but go ahead.
I think you can benefit from counseling at any stage of a relationship, because even good couples counseling is going to help you as an individual. And so the lessons you learn are going to apply to your next partner, even if this partnership doesn't last. So it's not as much about the phase of, how long you've been with somebody or any of that. It's more about, am I having doubts? Is there something for me to learn here? And in that case, the lessons, that you learn, even if that relationship doesn't last, you carry with you in the long term.
And then how do you deal with the devastation that they have when the relationship ends? Or do you?
Well, I think that, it's like any other kind of grief, right? I mean, often I think breakups feel like a death. And in the same way, there's powerlessness, and there's phases, and there's not necessarily anything we can do to take away the pain. We have to move through it. And over time, I think the lessons that we learn from relationships can be the redemptive piece. Kind of as time goes on and we begin to learn things, we can see some value in them. But some things in life are just painful. And we just have to move through that pain and not resist it in order for it to pass.
I think more people need to get that there is pain in life, and that's where we learn. There is fear in life, that's where we learn. So pain and fear are good teachers, except when you're going through it.
Well, they feel, in those moments, it often feels like all is lost. But that's because you're in hell. I mean, the metaphor I use is often kind of the facing your demons or your dragons. It's like there's a reason that every great story kind of invokes those archetypal themes, of looking at the thing you most fear, and then in the long run receiving the reward or the glory or the freedom, that conquering. And so in the moment where you're facing the dragon, you're kind of like, F, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. This could kill me. And that's quite literally what it feels like to face your pain, to face your greatest fear. Like, for example, when people are kind of detoxing from an addiction, I mean, you see it in the movies and in TV all the time, them writhing on the floor. I think that is the process of emotional transformation is a lot like that in every category. And it kind of goes to like a death and rebirth. One of my favorite quotes is J.K. Rowling said, "Rock bottom is the solid ground on which I built my life." And I think that's true for a lot of people.
So I agree with that. And rock bottom, people avoid through any means necessary hitting rock bottom. They, right. It's like this old video game, monkey, something, whatever. This monkey is, I'm just paraphrasing on the whole thing. This monkey or some sort of a gorilla or something is climbing this ladder, and then he falls down, but not that far, and then he keeps climbing, keeps falling. He doesn't get that if he falls all the way down, there's help on the bottom. And I would say that you're help on the bottom. When people do hit rock bottom, hopefully they come to you before then, but at least they would come to you when they hit rock bottom.
Yeah, most people unfortunately don't, because we're not at that breaking point yet where the pain of our habitual ways of being is less painful than the pain of changing. I talk about that in the introduction to my book, that the beginning of transformation is when the pain of where we are now becomes greater of the terror of changing.
Would you say that again?
Yeah, I talk about how the pain of the terror of where we are right now, what we're doing now, becomes, and I'm stumbling over my words, the pain of what we're doing now becomes greater than the terror of changing.
Wow. I hope everybody listened to that, because I asked Brooke to repeat it so that you would hear it again. And that means you also have to re-listen to this podcast again, my lovely audience, because she's got some good stuff here. So how do you think, if this is true in any aspect, relationships have changed from, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago?
Oh, yeah. Well, kind of as we referenced before, the increasing commodification of people and objectification of people. And objectification, I don't necessarily mean only in the bodily sense that we normally use it when we talk about women. I think we objectify men for things like status and money and power and that sort of stuff. But I think with, the advent of online dating, the sort of endlessness of people and profiles that you can choose from, it creates a sense that there's always something better around the corner. And a lot of research has pointed to the fact that the more options we have in choosing anything, like say a shampoo, the harder it is to make a choice and the less satisfied we are with our choices. So unfortunately, this tool that's, a wonderful resource and a great connector in many ways can also really make us less satisfied with what we have and give us the illusion that there's something better around the corner. And there's this kind of soulmate mentality in the US that,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh, but it's so ridiculous.
Yeah, you want to marry someone who feels like a soulmate, say, but, there's this idea that this person is just going to fulfill every missing part and I'm never going to be lonely again and I'm never going to be sad. It's like they're going to somehow, solve the human condition, remove me of all the existential pain of life, or free me from the existential pain of life and, grant me immortality. And, a person is bound to fail at that. So, I think that that's a real change from the companionate model of relationships, a few decades ago, where it was more like, we get along and we have the same values and let's make a family together. And the love was in the creation of building something together and living life together. And now it's like, no, I have to love you and you have to fulfill every piece of me for me to make that investment. And I think there's value and there's pitfalls to each approach.
Well, I think one of my perspectives is that you attract people on the level that you are at.
Absolutely.
And people don't get that. They always think they're going to, marry up or relate up. And they can from time to time, but even though that other person might be a leg up, there's still the essence of who you are, and the essence of who they are is still similar.
Well, it's very much the premise of my book, Why You Should Date Emotionally Unavailable Men. The idea is that women are constantly getting this message that, men are to blame. They're emotionally unavailable. You're a goddess, demand what you want, walk away from these horrible jerks. And the problem with that is that we deprive ourselves of the lessons that we have to learn from those relationships about ourselves and the ways that we are creating the emotional, quote, unavailability in our relationships. So there's a real culture of man bashing that I think actually disempowers women under the guise of women's empowerment, and is encouraging women to use narcissistic and manipulative defenses instead of coming to a relationship vulnerably and honestly. And I think it's really sabotaging relationships, and that's why I've written this book and why I want to get out this message. Is I really want to change the dialogue surrounding the emotional, unavailable man, and to help women to empower themselves in relationships, to get what they want out of love, and to become better people as individuals.
Well, I think women are expecting too much of men, and that's my opinion. And there's some men may be smarter than others and richer than others and so on and so forth, but men are different. They're not women. And for women to expect men to be like women is ridiculous. And I think that, men have a different way of looking at the world, a different way of acting. They accept things a lot easier and let go of things a lot easier than, by and large, than women do. Women hold on to things forever. Every woman, you could pick every woman on the street. She'll remember a problem girl that she had in high school, a problem guy she had in high school. Men go out for a beer. They'll fight somebody and they'll go for a beer. They'll hang out. They're not going to hold on to things because it's not the way their brain is focused. They have more important things to do. So at least
I think we hold on to things when they're not resolved, and part of the reason they're not resolved is because the communication dynamics within the relationship are broken. So and that goes both ways. The way a woman tries to confront or address an issue may come across as critical or passive aggressive or manipulative in some way, and that triggers the guy's defenses to kind of be dismissive, and again, these are stereotypes that can go both ways.
Sure.
Women, but men can be dismissive, and then the woman, it goes in circles, and we can really put the onus on both partners. It's easy to go, oh well, he's so dismissive. Well, hey, what about the way you started the conversation? That wasn't exactly inviting, a loving response, and so. Both people need one of the most important skills in relationships that isn't talked about with communication. I mean, people talk about I statements and things of that sort, but if you don't lower your anxiety before having a loaded conversation, it will not be a productive conversation, even if you use all the right skills. Because people can sense when, through gritted teeth, you're saying the right formula and it doesn't feel sincere. The tone of the conversation is more important than the words. And in order to get to a loving, real sincere tone, we have to be able to have the self-awareness to realize when our anxiety is high and learn how to self-regulate and come to the conversation calmly. And that invites calmness and openness typically in your partner. Now, not always. Some people, no matter how, quote, right you do it, are just, they're not the right person for you, and they're never going to be able to give you what you want. And that's, part of the book is when we own our role in relationships and change our role, then we can start to see relationships clearly. As long as we're, both kind of doing this power struggle dance, it creates just so much confusion in relationships, and it creates this like on and off dynamic, or are we right, are we wrong? But as soon as you start to change the way that you behave, and to act in ways that are healthy and loving, you start to see what kind of partner you have. Do they respond in kind? Are they able to meet you on that level? Or are they still kind of employing all the same defenses? And that's when you get clarity about, is this right or not just from an intellectual level, but from an experiential level.
Yeah, I'm just had some flashes in my head about, I no longer understand the concept of marriage after going through two of them and several relationships, but I think people are getting married too young still, and their brains are not complete. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's part of the problem. They have, as you say, there's a lot of expectations. I'm going to be putting the TV stars and movie stars in their own category, all of those people, because that's not real. Nothing is real, but certainly that's not real. And just looking at, the everyday people who have these problems, and as you say, if they come to a conversation with you or without you, if they're ready for a fight, which is what winds up to be, I want to fight, but I'm going to use the dialogue that Brooke said we needed to use, dear.
Right.
The other person can always tell by the tone
right.
that you're in for a fight.
Yeah, there was an improv skit I watched about that where I can't remember. It was but it was essentially, we're happy, kind of like the tone of, going to this party and saying all these lovely things about each other through this angry, gritted teeth. And yeah, it's very, people, what's the old statistic? I don't know exactly. Something like 80% of communication is nonverbal. That's what people read. They read facial tension. They read tone of voice. They read bodily tension, the way you're carrying yourself. All of those things are far more powerful than the words that you use. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't be careful with the words we use, but the words are almost a symptom in a way, because when anxiety is high, we inevitably communicate in ways that are distorted, skewed, black and white. And when anxiety is low, we tend to be far more balanced. The Gottman Institute has done a lot of research on couples, and they found that in the middle of a fight, if you have couples separate and read for 20 minutes, they can come back to a fight with more fairness, humor, and just calmness, and have a much more productive conversation. So a big part of what I do when I work with couples is teach them to regulate their anxiety and begin to notice when their anxiety is high, because they don't even, anxiety, people are so accustomed to living in an anxious state and communicating in an anxious state that they're not even aware that they're anxious. And so the first step is bringing awareness, and the second step is learning to regulate that anxiety. And then the communication naturally flows from there in a balanced way. So it's less about this like behavioral, here's the healthy way to communicate. That's kind of a top-down approach. Like, let me intellectualize this into a formula, but then it doesn't land as sincere. The bottom-up, the grassroots approach, as I kind of think of it, is, we have to start with regulating our internal state and finding a calm. And then the communication will naturally improve from there.
And it usually does. Everybody go to the gym for 45 minutes, then come to your appointment. And you will at least have released some physical tension.
Yeah, it's really important to cool off. Like one of the things that, couples will go around in circles for hours. And it's like, as soon as you find yourself going in circles where you're just not listening to each other, the sooner the better to say, look, I really want to have this conversation, but right now it's not productive. Let's take a break. Let's calm down. Let's take an hour or even a few days, however much time we need. And then let's come back to this. The problem is what'll happen is then you get into the power struggle about having the conversation. Someone will go, I can't have this conversation together. Well, we have to have, this is important. And, it becomes the same thing. But if the avoidant partner, the person who doesn't want to have the conversation, can say to the person, no, it's not that I want to avoid this. It's not that I don't want to come back to this. It's not that I don't care. I'm not saying we can't have this conversation ever. I'm saying right now isn't the right time. That's going to help the other partner to feel cared for and loved, as opposed to, oh, we're just going to sweep this under the rug and never deal with it. So that's the piece that a lot of people miss when they are trying to put a conversation on hold, is they tend to sometimes dismiss it and sweep it under the rug and not return to it. And that's obviously not the right way to do it, because that's just going to come back at some point. And those problems accumulate if you don't deal with them.
You can, I totally agree. It's just, wait till a better time. And not hurt the other person when you even say that. The best website for Brooke Sprowl is mylatherapy.com. I don't think I need to spell that out, which I usually do. And Brooke's best email address is BROOKE, S as in Sam, P as in Peter, ROWL @gmail.com. Brooke Sprowl. That's for the listeners and not the readers who are able to either look at Brooke's information on my Facebook podcast page, which is the Sanity Project podcast, or on my website where Brooke has her own page, which I'm sure some of you are there now. So give some final bottom line strategies for our listeners, Brooke, on improving communication skills.
Well, as I talked a lot about already, that regulating your anxiety is key. Something, a more practical implementation of that, and the thing I mentioned about taking responsibility for your role, is to start conversations by exploring and asking your partner how you may be contributing to the problem. And that demonstrates openness on your end in terms of looking at your role. That lowers their defenses. And that can just kind of create fertile ground for a different kind of more productive conversation, rather than, here's this grievance I have against you. Of course, that's going to put people on guard. So, here's this thing I noticed between us. Here's this thing we do together. Like having that attitude of here's this thing we create together, as opposed to here's this thing that you're doing wrong. Nobody likes to hear that. That makes people feel misunderstood and criticized. So I think starting conversations with, here's this thing I notice, how am I creating this? What am I doing here? What am I not seeing? Help me understand your perspective before voicing your concerns and the things that you're wanting to address, I think can really be a game changer.
Very good. I take notes, so I'm going to add this to the show notes. Okay, everybody, share this podcast with anyone you know, as well as re-listen to it over and over again to see if you may have missed something, and I'm sure that you did, because if I did, you probably did. And please give our guest, Brooke Sprowl, a magnificent review on iTunes, and you can also give the podcast a 5-star review. And you can also go to my website at askjoannevictoria.com and sign up for a free downloaded book called The True Self Handbook, A Guide to Transform Your Life. And it's free, by the way. And if you have any questions, you can reach me at askjoannevictoria@gmail.com. And I hope everybody enjoyed this conversation with Brooke Sprowl, and look for her book to come out real soon, Why You Should Date Emotionally Unavailable Men. Use your unhealthy relationships to transform yourself and your love life. Thank you, Brooke, for being here today.
Thank you so much. And there is an email capture list if you're interested in the book on the website as well, so you can sign up to be notified when that's released.
There we go, people. You have more opportunities to stay connected with Brooke Sprowl about her book. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to askjoannevictoria.com and continue the conversation on my podcast page. And get a free copy of my book, The True Self Handbook, A Guide to Transform Your Life. That's askjoannevictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.